Michael.
How did you feel once the war was finished?
I think everybody in America was relieved, both the soldiers and the families of the soldiers and just the general public. Everybody was really glad that it was over. There were a lot of really hard feelings all the way around. And for many years, people blamed the soldiers and really never gave them their due. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't until I started talking to some of my friends who had been over in Vietnam and learned what it was really like there from firsthand accounts that I began to understand and appreciate the sacrifices that the soldiers had made and how betrayed they felt when they came home and nobody appreciated what they'd done. It was really sad because instead of when soldiers come home, people should realize they've been through just a terrible, terrible time, and they should support them. They should be understanding. They should cut them a little slack. You know, they've had terrible, traumatic experiences. They've seen their friends killed. They've just seen horrible things. And instead of understanding and loving the soldiers who came home, everybody blamed them for the deaths of the ones that didn't come home, and that's wrong. They weren't the cause at all. And I think that, I hope that at least my generation learned their lesson from this, that we should appreciate what soldiers do for us. We should appreciate that they're willing to put their lives on the line, that they go through these horrible things on a daily basis that we can't even imagine. And we should support them, appreciate them, and thank them for what they've done.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, the lesson that I learned from the Vietnam War was to really be thankful that there are people like the men that went to war in Vietnam to protect my rights here.
Yeah. Well, did the people's temper die down after a while?
I don't think it died down so much as finally. What happens is when soldiers come home, they don't want to talk about it. They're just so traumatized. They have nightmares, they can't sleep, one or the other. They have periods of time during the day where they can't remember where they are. They think they're back in Vietnam. And it wasn't until years later, like maybe 10 years later, when the soldiers actually began to talk to people about what had happened there, that the temper of people that didn't go began to change. It took a long time for them to understand what the soldiers had been through, particularly in this guerrilla warfare, where you're out in the jungle, you don't dare fall asleep because you might get your throat slit in the night. It's just a terrifying way to live. And it took a long time before the public began to understand that. And I think that there's been a real turnaround. Well, it's been, 40 years now. It took a long time, and it was gradual. But I think once the soldiers began to express what had happened to them, how horrifying their experience was, then people began to understand a little bit better. And, it's the people back home who need forgiveness, but what they did was they forgave the soldiers, and that's kind of backwards. But that's what happened.
What about the people who ran away from the draft? Did they eventually move back, or did they stay where they went?
I don't know if they stayed or not, but I know that they were given amnesty, so they could come back if they want. That was sort of one of the things that the government decided they'd better do because the war was so unpopular.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Canada's a pretty nice place. They may have decided they liked it there and stayed. A lot of these are people that I haven't heard from in so many years, I don't know what happened to them.